This is a good day to have a theme song because Sad Trombone, I think, was taken. But anyway, hey, you were with The Drive. I am not Mario Smith. He is what I want to be when I grow up. But until such a day, I'm Robert Milazzo. I'm here with you for the next 2 hours on Backchannel. What is Backchannel, you ask? I heard you out there. I can hear things. No, actually, that means I can't hear them because my ears are covered. Back Channel is 6 a.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern, live streaming interactive content. I'm batting cleanup. That's what The Drive does with Mario Smith. I'm keeping the seat warm, but it's 2-hour shows and you can talk. And it's shows from London and it's shows from Texas and it's shows from New York and San Francisco and Antarctica. No, that would be cool. Can you guys send me out to Antarctica to do a show? I'll heat it up for you. First guest is a penguin. How do you get involved in said chat? Well, there's you just kind of talk into your device, not your vice. You can talk to your vice, but it won't get you anywhere on this show. You have to talk to your device. I have such and such a device. You say device. Say, that's the key word. Say, Rob, why are you here today? And that will show up on my dashboard. It will show up on our producer Gliss's dashboard, who I'm about to introduce, and we'll interact. I'll talk. I'll just. It'll be like we're in the room. I look at who's in the room already. Sudeis, what a cool name, is in the room. Mario from New York is in the room. Clarence is with us from Florida. Marquise from Washington State or DC, Marquise. Trinity from Louisiana, amazing state. Bella from Northern Virginia. Welcome to The Drive. So you can get involved, talk into your device. I will see said talk and I will respond to said talk. There are other ways to get involved. Go to backchannel.tv. You can see a way to engage with comments and watch on YouTube. This show is going live. That kind of mamma jamma is the way we do things around here. When was the last time you heard that term, mamma jamma? We've got to look up the definition of that. He's busy today, but this is the time I would ask our producer to look up Mamma Jamma. But he has other stuff because we have two guests today, and I'll roll that out. But first, I want to say hi to our producer, who is ready and willing and able from his luxurious estate with, I think that's a Japanese screen, or is that a skyline? Gliss, welcome, man.
Kind of a mixture of both, I guess.
I don't know why I'm welcoming you to your show. Can you welcome me to your show?
Welcome. Thank you for taking the reins while Mario's not here.
One day I want to do a show with you, twosome, and try to understand why the state income tax of Oregon is so high. Why? It's as much as California and Hawaii. Why, Gliss?
I know, but we don't have sales tax though, so there's that bonus.
Okay. And you have a lot of comic book artists living there. Elizabeth just joined the stream from Maine. I love Maine. Some really good friends in Maine. GB stepmother. I like that. I like when there's a lot of like hieroglyphics to the name. It's always fun to call out. Welcome, GB. And Gian from Oregon, your neck of the woods, Glisterino. Glycerine. Hey, man, quick question for you before we get rolling on today's show. Do you know who Philip K. Dick was?
Don't
lie. No lying today.
I don't know a lot about him. No, I've heard the name, but
okay. Good. I don't like when people lie. Taylor, without an A, is on the stream, and I think that's a phonetic thing, like a device thing. I'm sure there's a A in there, Taylor from California. And Taylor is new. Welcome, Taylor. This is a cool day because Gliss doesn't know who Philip K. Dick is. Eli joined the stream. I know, and that's kind of why I want to come to you today. Rhonda, I love this idea of like people coming in the stream saying, hey, Rhonda, welcome. Gliss, when I am pressed into duty, when you put up the bat signal to say, hey, can you host today? I always look at what went on historically. I'm a little older than you, like by a couple of months. Okay, by a decade probably. And I always look like March 2nd, Kimberly joined the stream. Hey, Kimberly. Taylor said yes. So Taylor, I see how big this thing is? I know there's an A. You left out the A. It's okay. That's our work. That's my work to interpret that. I'm a cartographer. Do you know what a cartographer is, Gliss?
No, I do not.
You know what I love about Gliss? He's not going to lie to you. A cartographer is someone who makes maps. Okay. I like words and I like dates. As I get older, Gliss, I like time. So I was thinking March 2nd, what's going on March 2nd? So we're going to look at today in two chunks, guest one, chunk one, guest two, chunk two, and thematic chunk, chunk I, chunk ishes. Elizabeth and Rodney are in the stream. Welcome, folks. March 2nd, Gliss, 40 years ago, Philip K. Dick died, actually. 1950, what was 40 years ago? What would that have been? 58? 58? No, gosh, my math is terrible. He died, what was 40 years ago, Gliss?
40 years ago? Jeez. 62? No. 82.
82. Yeah. You know why
I'm terrible at math. Math is
no. You know, I'm a moron. And let's play that. Who's the bigger moron? That's a game we should play on every show. You know why I should know? He died 3 months before Blade Runner came out. Have you ever seen Blade Runner?
I have, yes.
So Blade Runner is based on his book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Diana Young joined the stream. And Philip K. Dick, so the Blade Runner source material is Philip K. Dick. And so many of the cool movies, it's not just movies that became children of Dick's, Philip PKD, as the kids like to say, PKD, Philip K. Dick's stuff. But he never saw any of his books turned into movies. So let me ask you a question, Gliss, real quick roll call. Have you seen Minority Report, the movie?
I have, yes.
Based on a Philip K. Dick book. Have you seen Total Recall?
I have.
Based on a Philip K. Dick book, We Can Dream It For You Wholesale, one of the great book titles ever. Have you seen Man in the High Castle on Netflix?
I have not seen that one, but it's on my list of things to watch.
Jackie joined the stream. 1968, A Man in the High Castle comes out. It was the first ever Hugo Award-winning book of Philip K. Dick's. Are you getting a theme here? How much of his... Yeah. And he never saw any of them, which is amazing. So I don't want to say celebrate death. That's a weird one. You know what's funny, Gliss? When people pass, like Bowie or Prince or, Tony Bourdain, we always celebrate their passing. We don't celebrate their birthdays anymore. So, right. I always find this kind of public eulogizing interesting. We're not going to eulogize him 40 years ago, which means Blade Runner's 40 years old. What's the point? Well, one other thing before the point. The first VHS movie I ever rented was Blade Runner. Do you remember the first VHS movie? You know what a VHS is, right, Glass?
Oh yeah, no, we had VHS when I was a kid. I don't remember the first one, but
Jesus. This is why prep is so important, folks. Do you see like prep work, rehearsal before opening night? Sometimes you have to go right to opening night. Anyway, Philip K. Dick. So I want to look at some of the progeny today with a guest, but I also, Gliss, want to take it into one of the things he's left us. He wrote over 40 books. He died at 53, relatively young, I think. I mean, I hope it's young. And all these kind of series eyes that came out of it. But another thing that came out of it, in 1977, he did a talk in France. And his fans thought he was going to do a talk on sci-fi. He did a talk, and it was called, If You Think This World Is Bad, You Should See Some of the Other Ones. And it was really something that he conned on to, that we're living in a simulation. That life is a simulation. What do you think about that, Gliss, on its face? Have you ever thought of, is life a simulation?
I think everybody's kind of pondered some of these kind of thoughts. It's, it definitely makes your mind work a little bit.
Gun to your head, are we in a simulation or not?
I'd probably say no.
Folks out there in chat land, gun to your head. Oh, that's a terrible metaphor. But do you think we're living in a simulation? That's what we're going to look at today. I have a lot of crass metaphors. I'll keep them out of the chat today. But what I mean is, we're in this place now, Gliss, the simulation into metaverse, right? Yeah. We have all these Versailles or Versailles, not to be mistaken with Versailles, France, but, we have all these iterations of dual worlds, simulacron, I can't say that word, but this idea of copying. And it's something Philip K. Dick talked a lot about, especially in 1977, predated. Now, I want to blow your mind for a second here. Minority Report, the movie you said you saw, right? Tom Cruise. Remember the precogs, those people in the bathtub?
Yes.
Guess what year he wrote that book in?
Well, I'm going to say it was before 1982.
Give this man a job.
I'm going to go for somewhere in the 70s.
Lower,
Oh,
1956.
really?
Can you
Okay,
believe that? I mean,
that's crazy.
are you stunned by that? Like, okay,
So
in the
when he was a
book,
young man.
well, in the book, the Tom Cruise character is bald and chubby, so that didn't make it to screen, but the precogs did. My point is, like, I think Dick is one of the original precogs. You know, how he prophesized what I think we're living in now with Facebook becoming Meta and Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. And now we have morality issues in metaverses. We have NFTs in metaverses. You know, total recall is a real thing. And that's why I want to have, I'm going to rev up where we are with the guest in a second, because we're going to bring him on, because I'm really excited to have a filmmaker who's dug into this earth with his film last year, Glitch in the Matrix, 2021. I think it started at Sundance 2021. He's just a really great documentarian. I guess my point is, you know, this is as old as Aristotle, actually. I won't bore you, Gliss, or anybody with history lessons, but it's as old as Aristotle, who talked about the cave, where the philosopher is free when he or she leaves the cave to see life is a simulation. Life is an illusion. Nietzsche talked about, I'm not going to bring the house down, I promise you. Don't leave the stream yet. But Nietzsche talked about it. Hey, Gliss, this just
Yeah.
in, 1999, The Matrix. Have you seen
Yeah.
it?
Absolutely.
And what did you think about that? Did it provoke any thought about the synthetic world, life as a simulation? Because I was there, I saw it when it was released, and it was like, it blew the doors off this concept. Did it spark anything for you, or did it just feel like kind of cool entertainment?
No, I think it sparked some thought on my end. I was only 14 at the time, but actually, kind of bringing it full circle. That's the first movie I remember watching on a DVD player. So
Really? Well, I guess what I'm trying to do, ours excluded, is round up all the big brains in the world who think these kind of thoughts of multiple universes living in simulations. And if you think it's just for game theorists anymore, you're wrong. Now, you could say what you want about Elon Musk, but Elon was asked, are we living in a simulation? You know what he said, Glister?
what did he say?
He said the odds that we're in a base reality is 1 in a billion. That mathematically, by his math, we are of simulation. And if you extrapolate that out, if we're in a simulation, we're not the only simulation. So I guess my point is, it's not your grandmother's metaverse anymore. You know, games, uh, digital economy, NFTs, sports that use analytics. We're going one way, it seems. But what I want to talk to today's guest about is, you know, once you start thinking that thought, I don't know, are you paranoid, Gliss?
Am I paranoid?
Yeah.
Right now, or just in general?
Am I scaring you? This isn't, you know, I'm not Mario Smith. We're not talking about the news you could use. This is like evergreen stuff. Are you a paranoid person, Glister?
Generally speaking, not too much about certain things, I guess. But
I guess my point, when you think something like the world can be a simulation, can you unthink it? You know what I mean?
probably not.
Mm.
I mean, I would think that's, if you already have that concept in your head, it's it's kind of hard to come away from something like that.
And again, whatever you think of Facebook, the fact that it changed its name to Meta or is in the process, does that ring any bells? Even if there are alarm bells, does it ring any bells for you?
Yeah. Honestly, I've gone further and further away from Facebook over the last couple years.
And I think they have too, actually. I think this is a note about how we're not going to be simply like a yearbook catch up. We're going to do something with digital economy. We're going to skate to where the puck is heading. I'm not here to sing the praises of Facebook, but I'm just saying this is everywhere. Disney has a metaverse. They've hired people to engineer metaverses. Now, Marvel has a multiverse, which is not to be confused with a metaverse, because that's what I want to zero in today with our guests. This idea that life is this kind of synthetic piece. You know, it's like almost Pokemon Go is a kind of metaverse. You know, it's like it's fabrication meets organic. You know, are you scared about any of this, or you feel we can kind of live peacefully if this is coming our way, Gliss? What are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to do?
I mean, I wouldn't say it makes me nervous. Like just the generation I grew up in, like we went from having no cell phones to in my adult lifetime, pretty much everything revolves around our technology. So like, I think you just kind of adjust with the times, and it just kind of happens naturally. Like I always keep an open mind about everything, with all the different outlets of technology that are out there these days.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to do this in closing, I think the other parts that Philip K. Dick talked about and I think about is like empathy and humanity. And the other thing we're talking about is, Gliss, this just in, we're doing a show on a device.
True.
Riyadh is asking if people have crypto real estate. Riyadh is here from Northern California. I mean, that's those kind of parts. GB Stepmother says yes. This is kind of it. I feel like it's kind of closing in around us. I feel like there will be a day we go to school in a metaverse. There will be a day where we perform athletics in a metaverse. And if the aspiration is freedom, does it stand to reason we're going to have some police in a metaverse? You know what I mean? It's like, what are we building? We're building, another kind of world on the side of our world, or we're already there. So I want to talk to our guest, Rodney Asher, a really thought-provoking filmmaker. I want to talk to him about this. He lived this life, and I wonder if you can unstick out of these thoughts. Gliss has no problem unsticking from a thought. He's always on to the next one. And Riyadh is talking about golf on Oculus. It's like there's really interesting bedfellows here. Facebook owns Oculus, or I can't tell, does Oculus own Facebook? Microsoft is trying to acquire Activision Blizzard for $70 billion. So I feel like things are lining up. And what side of history are we on? And what are we? I know this sounds too existential for a Wednesday afternoon, but one of the reasons I wanted to come on is it's a kind of concept that ties into Backchannel and doing shows and interacting with them. I love it. I'm fascinated by it. Right. Thanks, Riyadh. Meta owns Facebook and Oculus. Oh my gosh. So Meta, I think that just happened while I said that sentence. But anyway, Gliss, if you're still on board to produce, not that I haven't bored you to tears, we actually have two guests. One, Rodney Asher, we're going to meet, and later on, I know you're a hoop guy, right? Are you a hoop guy?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, that's a lie. I'm making a list of all the fabrications.
Where do you think I get these bad knees from?
I don't know, your parakeet. We're going to talk a little March Madness because no one is immune, and there's no cure for it, Gliss. There's no cure for the March Madness. You realize that, right?
That is true.
Okay.
Well, you could just watch a lot of basketball. That might give you your fix.
Right. But the scary part is when the tournament's over and you're still watching it. That's the real madness. You know what I mean? No time for madness. Time for a break. When we come back, Rodney Asher to talk about the history chain of Philip K. Dick to the Matrix to really big thought. Whether you like the thinkers or not, the thoughts are real. And we want to see where we are now with Rodney Asher. More to come. I'm excited to be here, keeping the seat warm for Mario Smith on the drive. Thanks for being a passenger. And jump in the chat. Here's the way we do it. So Rob, do you have any NFTs? My response is, I just learned how to spell NFT. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Rodney Asher. It's no fabrication. Talking about fabrications today to say one of the reasons I wanted to talk about metaverses and Philip K. Dick is because of the way these shows come to you. I'm fascinated by it, and I'm wondering what's the optimal experience of it. Put in the chat what Heidi joined the stream. Thank you, Heidi. What is the optimal experience of this? So I want to talk to today's guest about that, but I also want to see what you think of that. Like, what is the idea? I love the idea that you feel we're having a conversation. So, what's better when you have a conversation than to invite really smart people into the stream? The late Woody Allen once said, "Being paranoid means being well informed." Well, we're well informed. How's that paranoia doing for you? Today, we're talking 40 years ago today. Philip K. Dick died of a stroke, the ripe old age of 53, very young. And ever since, we've been living in his world. Or is it worlds? Well, thankfully, one filmmaker followed Mr. Philip K. Dick down a rabbit hole. And Philip would have been proud looking at this concept of simultaneous worlds, world building, and all the spokes on the wheel, the morality, the gains and losses, and can you unthink a thought once it's been thunk? He directed the film, amongst others, 2021, A Glitch in the Matrix. And here to talk about Mr. Philip K. Dick and other matters. Philip K. Dick, as I was saying, is the original precog. So we have our own precog. Please welcome to The Drive, Mr. Rodney Asher. Hey, Rodney, welcome to the show. Well, Rodney's getting queued up.
I'm still I'm trying to get him online right now, so give us just a minute.
Yeah, but so should I do the whole intro? Like, should I do it in a different language? I mean, if you're in the stream, just tell me, Rossi. Oh, I love Rossi in California. Where in California, Rossi? I just want to know what language should I do that intro again. Do you know how long I spent on it? I actually just kind of made it up. I was just thinking of this concept of, one of my favorite things to quote or find quotes on is paranoia. But, and I just, it's a fascinating concept. It's like, I wonder what the kind of where we're going with these worlds and these metaverses. And it's funny, I was talking about Microsoft earlier. I don't think they've clinched the deal for Activision Blizzard yet, though it seems like by fiscal year end of 2023 it'll be clinched. It takes a lot of time to migrate $70 billion into your bank account. I wouldn't know. I've seen a lot of movies about this kind of stuff. Although in the movies it happens like with a mouse click. I think in Die Hard they just hit send and it's sent. Microsoft's metaverse is really using the charisma of games. They're calling it games, like these are games. I think Zuckerberg, I almost called him Zucker. Zuckerberg is looking at these as simulated experiences. The concept that he wants. This is a place to meet, hang out. I was thinking of it like there are these things called sandbox games where like the build is this kind of sandbox and you just kind of migrate through and buy things, right? I mean, I'm not going to get too cynical about that today. I'm not going to get too cynical about these companies wanting you to buy their things. I just feel like experientially, no ticking clock. Like life has a ticking clock. Are we trying to escape the ticking clock? It's like, oh, I have to pick up my kids and I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do a show and I have Ray from Alabama. Oh, I haven't been to Alabama. I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I really was. It wasn't a simulation. I did a tour of all the cool college towns in the U.S., and I went to Tuscaloosa. I'm guessing Ray is a Tide fan. Ray, let us know in the chat, please. Although I think I can tell. So sandbox games, ticking clocks. It's a kind of, are we trying to escape responsibility? Riyadh went to Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama. That's right. That's where Space Camp is. Really underrated movie. Cute movie. Leah Thompson. I really like that movie. I think every kid has wanted to do that. Riyadh did that, which is fascinating. And he's back to tell the tale. So I wonder if you got any of that cool ice cream to eat. I see our producer's back. I believe Mr. Asher is with us.
Yeah, you want to do that intro?
Let me give an intro.
English
Rodney, you could probably hear me, but it took like a week to write this thing. No, I'm teasing. We are honored to look at Philip K. Dick in memoriam, or the memorializing 40 years ago today, at the ripe old age of 53. I still can't get that out of my head that he was that young, because he always looked beyond time and timeless. The original precog. And I don't like to make jokes twice, but I was thinking of this, the late Woody Allen quote, being paranoid means being well informed. Well, here's someone who I believe is well informed and put it on film. So let's hear what he learned and what he has successfully unlearned about simultaneous worlds. Philip K. Dick, please welcome to The Drive, Professor Rodney Asher. Rodney, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
When did you first hear the name Philip K. Dick?
Oh, I'm sure it was, in association with, with Blade Runner.
Had you seen it? So 1982, what's interesting, and I was saying this before, Phil never saw a movie of his on screen. I think he did see a cut of Blade Runner.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a full cut or if it was just, some special effects footage. Certainly, he was blown away by what he saw. And I was just listening to a podcast talking about it yesterday, where they quoted him, as saying, this feels like, documentary footage of the future, right? This doesn't feel like, fantasy.
We're going to talk kind of subtextually about signs. And I was making the joke that the first thing I ever saw on VHS was Blade Runner. I think you always remember your first. There's a bad joke in there. I just wonder, like, when I think of the accumulation, pardon me, Philip K. Dick, his estate is calling me and says cease and desist. No, when I think of the accumulation of signs in my life, a lot of them go back to Phil Dick. I spoke to Hampton Fancher. I don't know, have you ever run into Hampton Fancher in your travels?
Not in person, no.
Super interesting guy. I'm going to call him the screenwriter of the original Blade Runner. I know David Peoples was credited, but I think Peoples also said this is really Hampton's piece. Hampton went to see Philip K. Dick late in his life. He told me. And he said when he got there, they talked a lot about LSD. They talked a lot about amphetamines, because I guess Dick said the first book he ever wrote that wasn't on amphetamines was Scanner Darkly, actually. He also said they talked a lot about Joseph Conrad. It was interesting. I don't know if that strikes you at all. Hearts of Darkness.
Yeah.
And he also. Well, I'm sorry.
No. Please finish with where you were going.
Well, I was going to say that he also said there was a large baby in a crib who's trying to get through the bars of the crib. And it reminded me of a Miyazaki movie. I guess my whole point is I think Dick had designed this world around his, I'm going to use this word lightly, sanity. I think we all do. But what do you think of this? There's always these thoughts about, like, Philip K. Dick's state of mind. And was he a prophet? Is that too hard
Well, I mean, I know when I was in the midst of, the film A Glitch in the Matrix, which draws a lot on Phil K. Dick. One way that I like to describe it was, sure, he may well have been neurotic, if not more disturbed than that. But if he was, it was in a way that the rest of us were going to be 30, 40 years down the road, right? That he's sort of patient zero for a lot of the neuroses of the 21st century.
And I always hold my breath when I think Minority Report was written in 1956. It's stunning. Have you ever gone back and reread any of those?
Oh, I reread a bunch of them, for in that one in particular. And one thing that's really interesting, just thinking about the movie adaptions, of Minority Report or Total Recall, a lot of them is, he never wrote about, I don't want to say never, but he typically didn't write about macho, aggressive action heroes, right?
Yeah.
He always wrote about, schlubs and losers, so the notion of, like, Tom Cruise and Arnold Schwarzenegger in those movies is kind of funny, and, sort of a flip from, I think something, much closer to the way that he wrote these stories are, character actors like, Paul Giamatti feels like, Philip K. Dick, kind of protagonist. I know there's a satire. There's a satire of his short stories called Solar Shoe Salesman, right? Because a lot of these guys are everyday guys. Even, I guess Arnold is just supposed to be a construction worker in Total Recall, but he certainly is a remarkable specimen of one.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was thinking your Tom Cruise piece is really funny to me because I believe the protagonist, as written, is balding and fat. I
No,
believe.
specifically, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, it's also, I mean, one thing I find interesting about that movie, especially the last few years, right, is, there's been a lot of controversy about, about how the police force works, right? Is that I don't think it's by design, but one thing about that movie is it really presents a police force that has an insane amount of funding, right? All these spaces are gigantic palatial glass and steel, monuments that, if there was one cutaway, to a crumbling school, with secondhand books, falling out of wet cardboard boxes, it could have gone to a place more of a Paul Verhoeven-esque, satire, because, that police force has clearly got, 80. It looks like they've got, 85% of the funding of, of the city that they're operating in, which, as somebody who was always afraid of the cops, right? He was always afraid that they were, watching him, or, at one point I have a quote from an interview with him, where he says, he was always afraid that he was going to be arrested for some crime that, he wasn't even sure what it might be. The notion that they would have access to, unlimited amounts of, funding for, technology and, this experimental precog, technology as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because who are they going to use it against? People like Phil K. Dick.
Exactly. Just to call out a few people who've joined the audience of our discussion. Terry has joined Maeve, and Matt have joined. Christy has joined. Welcome. We're here with Rodney Asher. It's interesting. I always think two of the Godfathers, and it's not about gender. I just don't know the word for binary Godfathers as such. But I was thinking about Dick and Kafka. And in a way, because it seems like Kafka had an impact on Phil Dick, the trial, like what crime did I commit, and also the life histories are eerily interestingly similar. Then Kafka died at 40. None of his books really did much of anything in terms of publishing in his lifetime. It's that old story. It's that old Van Gogh thing, right? Like after Kafka had died, and Phil probably was a little different because I know he won the Hugo Award and he had been published. But what do you make of that? Because one of the things your film does really interesting is the way it treats, I'm going to call it the messenger of information. So I want to transition into the importance of the messenger, even if the message is right. What about these men and these artists, these people as messengers? Why don't we heed them in their time?
Maybe the short answer is that it would hurt to, right? They're trying to sound, they're trying to sound an alarm, and it's much easier to go to continue, business as usual. I think the other interesting thing about these two guys is that, when people talk about them casually, I don't think they get enough credit for how funny both their works can be.
Great point.
That they're not just, sour gloom and doom prophets. They're also, very sophisticated satirists.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Did you think about that scene in Ubik, right, at the beginning, where, what's his name, Ressinger, can't leave his apartment because, like, there has to be some micro exchange of 25 cents or something to activate the locks, which is, sort of a hilarious version of the world we live in now, where you literally can't open a door or walk into a space without, some sort of charge being activated.
Well, it's really funny, Paul Verhoeven, Steven Soderbergh, who, it's not a Kafka screenplay, but it's about Kafka, the film Kafka. So Soderbergh and Terry Gilliam in Brazil, I'm not lumping these together, but in a way it's that touch. Use the word satire, but it's like the top spin of the message is really fascinating. Not to dismiss Blade Runner. Blade Runner is as a masterpiece. But what I want to go into your work a little bit and then look at kind of this idea of the day-to-day of our lives now. And because it's 1977, and if you think this world is bad, you should see others. I want to get to that and Phil
Yeah.
Dick, which is, his titles were some of the greatest of all time. We Can Dream It For You Wholesale. I mean, and on and on and on. But one thing, and I've always wanted to tell you this, even when I saw Room 237, which I love because I'm a Kubrick nut as well. This idea of cloaking, I'm going to use words, they're not your words, like the avatar of the message. Like in Room 237, we don't see the subjects who are giving their opinions. In Glitch in the Matrix, we see their avatars, which has its own language to it. What was that a conscious approach to not see these people, like across the board? It's not just about Glitch in the Matrix.
Well, it wasn't so much like trying to hide them or make them anonymous, so much as it was thinking about the way that sort of talking head shots work in documentary, right? Like in 237, I think it was about. In some ways, it was about thinking about the way a voiceover works in documentary and how they're often presented as an unassailable voice of authority, voice of God. If an off-screen narrator is talking, then that these are the facts being laid out. And I thought it would be interesting to have narrators who have radically different perspectives, and if not always, if they don't directly contradict each other, though sometimes they do. They all have radically different points of view. And the challenge as a filmmaker that gives you, working in sort of a collage video essay style of, there's sort of, in some ways, I see the talking head shot as a safety net, right? Like if you don't have an obvious image you can cut to, well, you cut back to the person sitting on the couch, even if there's no more visual information that you're getting from the 15th time that you move to that shot, right? So by removing that element, both the way that the voice works plays a little bit differently, and it forces me to be more creative about expressing their ideas visually. And then, Glitch in the Matrix was about the way that as we communicate now, moving into the future, we do it more and more through avatars, or even just still images. If you think about when you're instant messaging somebody, that you have a little JPEG that represents you, and it might be an image of you, or it might be some cartoon character that you like. That we're moving to a place where our voices are coming out of things that aren't necessarily realistic three-dimensional rendering of our own faces.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just a lot of play with that, as even the way we're talking now. That I'm seeing a video of your face, but it still looks like a 400 by 200 square of pixels that are abstracted in its own way.
Well, you still were able to agnosticize, that's not a word, but the message, which I thought was really great. I mean, especially in 237, different conversation for a different day, and the avatars took it to this other place. Speaking with Rodney Asher here on The Drive, I was also thinking about, I said this earlier, can you unthink a thought? Meaning when you can, thinking about 1977, Phil Dick doing his what people thought would be a kind of State of the Union of sci-fi, and became a simulation theory, and life is a simulation. Doing Glitch in the Matrix, did you think things you were shocked to think about the life we live? And have you been able to unthink those things?
Well, I think both those projects, as well as the nightmare in most every one of these things that I wind up working on, it's not so much that the ideas within them are frightening or dangerous, but they do become obsessive.
Right.
And I sort of have the luxury of being able to dive deep down a rabbit hole of something that I find personally fascinating, and spend a year or two talking to other people about it, and then putting those perspectives about it, and then even in situations like these, getting to talk about it afterwards. And in a way that just sort of wears them out, I suppose. Like after I finished, screening and talking about 237, I haven't watched The Shining again, and I don't spontaneously start conversations about it. It's these projects are in a way therapeutic for me because they help me, kind of squeeze all the juice out of a sponge of a particular rabbit hole that I might otherwise get stuck in for the rest of my life.
Well, your rabbit hole is all over the news all the time. I mean, not your rabbit hole, but said rabbit hole. And not to be too cute about it, but it's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on in this moment in time, not simply because of Phil K. Dick, but also the convergence of the news in the sense of like meta, Facebook becomes meta, Microsoft has a metaverse, Disney has a metaverse, every day is interesting, there's morality centered around these synthetics, and your film does a beautiful job and a fascinating job. You must see the film if you're listening and your name is not Rodney. You must see this film. It's fascinating. But also, so I agree with you. Films leave your system. They must. But this one, man, this is kind of handwriting meet wall, no?
Yeah, well, thanks. Even if what we're talking about is kind of troubling, but yeah, I mean, all these ideas still keep bouncing around. Like even like 237, that we're not all talking about The Shining all the time, but we are living in a world where people approach, reality in the news as if it's in a 237 kind of a way, digging out all sorts of signs and symbols from most everything they encounter, arguing about them, sharing them, amplifying them, so this one with watching the watching the metaverse become more mainstream, and simulation theory conversations just keep cresting like waves. I certainly pay attention to it, but typically when I look at them, it's the same arguments, right? It's the same. It's the same ideas. So I kind of, may speed read a new article, a new essay, new editorial about this stuff. Look for any new developments, and if there isn't anything else there, if it's just the same story again, then it's easy enough to keep moving.
Do you, I it's funny. This one is a pebble in my shoe. I cop to that because it is not simply our scarves coming back in style. I'm not diminishing what you're saying at all. We're here with Rodney Asher. I just feel like, and yeah, you're right. It is about cognitive functioning. Like all of these questions are wrapped. I just feel like the validators have said something, and we could say whatever we want about the validators, but the games are around us. Now, again, I agree. We can litigate that in a certain way. I'm more interested in litigating a little bit with you in the last couple of beats. Is what is the people who seek to build a or emboss this concept that we're in a simulated reality? What is the aspiration here? That we're all animated figures? This is a weird one. Are we trying to get more like the Lawnmower Man, the movie?
I know it.
Or the Irishman. I thought of that, the Scorsese thing. Remember how Scorsese did the digital de-aging? What is the optimal here? Do you like that Irishman, Lawnmower Man? It's not great, but they get better.
Well, I mean, certainly if you're using it, to talk about the digital creations of people, right? That the Irishman is, pretty close to where we're at now. I mean, I've had a lot of these conversations about, well, why do people believe we're in a simulation, and what does that mean about them? And is that a coping strategy? Is that a this, or is there something Freudian there, or is that a defense mechanism of a world that's spiraling and it's too fast and it's too confusing, and you want to be able to dismiss things in a way? And it's like, yeah, it could be any of those things, but of course, if it's real, then they're thinking it because they've discovered what's really going on. and I'm not necessarily a proponent of simulation theory. I tend to, go with the, I tend to default to, sort of Sagan's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, kind of line of thinking. But, I don't dismiss it entirely, especially since, I'm a fan of virtual reality. I have an Oculus, and, I love, in particular, like playing ping pong with friends, who are, in Atlanta or in Toronto, and feeling like I'm visiting them virtually. And
it's funny. Well, I'm sorry. Go on, please.
Yeah, no, I could just keep going on. Let me
No,
just say, I happen to be a fan of virtual reality, right?
I love that what you're saying, and I just feel like some of the pretzel of this is who's saying it, and what condition are they in, and what are our beliefs, how much is leisure, how much is casual, how much is real. I was thinking about, don't hold this against me, but Elon Musk, as you were saying this, he was talking about proof, whatever that word is, that look at how far we've come from Pong. This is something he says in your film.
Oh, sure, I know the argument.
Right. So from Pong to, some virtual, beautifully rendered video game. And then, and then there's the mathematical arguments in a way, or the probability arguments, like Nick Bostrom is probably, one of the more famous ones. What do you think? I mean, I know you talk about, this concept, extraordinary proof, but
yeah,
I said this to my producer, pardon the metaphor, gun to your head. What do you think about our terrestrial life now?
You mean, are we living in a giant computer, or is this an organic, chemical, really real world, generally real world? I tend to default to that it is the one that it is a chemical, real world, a chemical biological real world, but I can't necessarily, intellectually, I don't think that I can dismiss the, sort of elegance of Bostrom's trilemma. The idea that if it looks like we're heading toward, by the standards of our own simulations, it looks like, a fully realistic one is not only possible, but coming along in the next 20, 50, 100, 200 years. And he makes that elegant spin. If it's possible, then it already happened, because from the, moving from the idea that, like if you could sort of look at the question from outside of time, right? That if they're going to make a virtual world, they'll make more than one, and as soon as they make two, though they'll likely make millions, then the computer digital virtual worlds, the fully realistic ones, will outnumber the one and only real one, and therefore it's more likely that you'd be in the digital one. I don't know if I did justice to Bostrom's three-point argument. And I see the logic in it, and I don't know that I'm necessarily capable of moving outside of that argument, but
yeah,
I still feel, emotionally, I don't feel convinced that this is all within a big computer, right? Even if intellectually I can't really, I don't feel like I can take on that, the math and the logic, and I'll cop, and I won't put up any sort of fight before agreeing that Bostrom and Musk and a lot of those guys are exponentially smarter than I am.
Well, it's funny also, as we throw a couple last thoughts here, graciously giving us his time, Rodney Asher. See Glitch in the Matrix, see Room 237, see his work, Nightmares, see everything. I think he's one of the most interesting filmmakers now, documentary or narrative. I was also thinking about, this leisure piece. Each company is looking at metaverse side differently, and I was thinking Zuckerberg is kind of painting this joie de vivre thing. It's a social thing, right? And then there are other companies looking at it in a kind of more, let's say, train set like way. I was thinking of Horizon Worlds, which is actually a thing now that I think of it. I don't know if you read the London-based Nina Jane Patel. the co-founder and vice president of a metaverse research clinic called Kabuni Ventures, said a gang of 3 to 4 avatars sexually harassed her and gang raped her while she was using Horizon Worlds. Had you heard about this? I think this was
I have not heard that story, but it may explain why I think Zuckerberg said that there's going to be sort of like the 6-foot bubble
personal
characters
boundary,
from one another.
That's exactly the gestalt. So they
that's that's disturbing and fascinating. I don't know that one story in particular. It's interesting that you described like Zuckerberg is seeing it as a thing of leisure, because the videos that I saw
commerce.
To me, it looked like he was setting up the metaverse as sort of an alternative to like Zoom conversations, right? As a place to have meetings. And, I've done that myself, like within, there's a program that I like where you can kind of create an art gallery or an office and have a friend come in, and a friend and I, spent a couple of weeks in one working on on an idea for a screenplay, putting our virtual Post-it notes, on the wall and rearranging them. And, he lives in Atlanta and I live here, so that we were able to, sort of meet in that space. And it was a much nicer, more personal way to collaborate than, a Zoom call or a phone call. And I can see that kind of thing being really useful.
Last but not least, this is a crummy idea to throw at you, but I was really, amongst others, but I was also really taken. The film is beautiful, and this is not a promotion for the film in any way. I reached out to you because of the topic, but I just happened to. I'm taking the moment to tell you that I really love the film.
But thanks.
I just don't like. This is not some weird promotional train. I mean, you've ridden that one. What I mean is, like, that's done and dusted. This film is alive still. I was thinking about in your film, Chris Ware, the great, say, illustrator artist, talks about playing Minecraft with his daughter. It's a beautiful moment, and about how it evokes a feeling of death. It's fascinating kind of sentiment. I guess my point is this a good time to be alive with all these interesting big conversations, or is the world getting smaller? Are we shrinking? Are we expanding thought? Because these things have been alive since you talked about Descartes. We've talked about Plato. We've talked about Nietzsche, talking about simultaneous realities, philosophical thought. Is the world getting bigger or smaller? Is this a good time to be alive?
Well, it's funny because there's all there. It seems like we're continuing to be in the midst of multiple crises. But whenever anybody talks about the good old days, you don't have to dig too far to find some horrible reality hiding behind the surface of different time, almost any time period that someone might have nostalgia for. I mean, certainly, I think it's always a good time to be alive in the midst of change, right? And being able to both see things that are genuinely new, and then as I hit middle age and hopefully aren't leaving it too quickly behind me. Being able to watch patterns recur. When you talk about the world getting smaller, it does remind me of another, Philip K. Dick passage, which was in perhaps my favorite book, Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said.
I was thinking that because I was thinking that when you're talking about police states, like I'm
well,
sure somebody owns that book. Yes, it's a beautiful book. Beautiful.
It's and it seems like the most cinematic of most of them.
I agree with you.
It's like a famous talk show host who goes from being in the 1% to finding himself an anonymous loser in a sort of police state totalitarian version of America. And because you can imagine, it's like a part for George Clooney, right? It's like
exactly.
It's really unlike those other stories that are about schlubs. It's like one of his few books that's actually about
he's
a good-looking, talented celebrity.
He's a celebrity. The protagonist is a celebrity. Yes.
It could be Will Smith. It could be any of these guys. But there's the moment in there where they talk about where he gets picked up, and he gets picked up by the cops, and he's able to talk his way out of it. But I don't remember if it's his own inner voice or if it's the omniscient narrator, but they talk about how in a nation in which, everything is always recorded, it isn't as if you're always going to get caught for any bad thing that you do, right? Because there's just too much data and too much noise for them to keep track of. But, and this is something that feels all too possible now. Once you get noticed by the authorities, once you get on somebody's list, they can then retroactively look back at everything you've ever done.
Right.
And
right.
and find that dirt on you. That you got to keep your head. You got to keep your head down. Not because every time you misstep you'll get dinged, but once you get noticed, there'll be something in your past that they can find, most likely.
Again, what was it? Information Bureau? Is that the Dick novel that became,
that became the Information?
Yeah, they tweaked it, right? The Matt Damon.
Yeah, they did. It's like one word off. Yeah.
Yeah,
It turned into a love story.
Well, hey.
Yeah.
As Philip K. Dick told Hampton Fancher, who told me, Hollywood is just one big android factory. Hey, Rodney, thank you so much, man. This was great. I know, believe me, I could sit and just listen. I mean, I always feel like I'm interrupting good thoughts, and I apologize, but I don't, because good thought leads to more curiosity, and your work continues to make me curious, which is keeping me young. So thanks, man. Thanks, Rodney, for being with us, and we'd love to do this again sometime.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Robert. Awesome. I really appreciate all that.
Thanks for being here. Cool.
Of course.
Awesome. So from one form of madness, we're going to another form of madness, and there may not be a cure for this form of madness. We're going to take a break and bring on someone to talk about the madness of March. It's as old as time. Well, not as old as time. It's not as old as time. It's as old as NYU. Remember when NYU had a good basketball team? Fordham used to have a really good basketball team. Maybe he remembers that. He's not that old, folks. But the other thing I wanted to tackle today when we come back is the other kind of March. The tingles are coming. A week and a half, Selection Sunday. We're going to talk about March Madness NCAA. From an interesting point of view, someone I have listened to in different iterations, podcasting, video, radio show. We're lucky to have him here. Mr. Robin Lundberg will be here. Let's take a break. When we come back, Allie is here on the stream. Welcome, Allie. Dory is here from Texas. Welcome, Dory. And when we come back, Robin Lundberg. So stick with us. Break time. Be right back. Back here on The Drive, I'm Robert Milazzo, filling in with Mario Smith. It is 5 o'clock Eastern. Oh my gosh, where does the time go? And it's still light out. It's getting lighter longer. Time, dates, calendar. How do we tell what day and month it is? I know as a sports fan, it's usually like, what's on TV? What are we watching? What are we not watching? Most sports big brains, like one we're about to introduce, knows February is a bit of a dead zone. And March is, okay, no pitchers and catchers. We missed that. We missed that train. We're missing baseball games. But one thing we're not missing is the madness, the March Madness. We're hearing words like bracketology. We don't use that word a lot outside of these couple of months. Bubble. Okay, that's more common if you have kids. My point is, it's March Madness time. It's NCAA tournament time. In a week and a half is Selection Sunday. But what I want to know from today's guest, because I know his jam is maybe more pro hoops as is mine, but I want to know, why is everyone go crazy over this? What is the most unathletic people, sorry grandma, in the world love the March Madness? So let's settle this bet. When I say March Madness, people come out of the woodwork. Oh, I got to get a bracket in. Oh, UCLA, Duke, Maryland. Well, maybe not Maryland. Sorry, Robin. Today's guest on The Drive, next guest, he's a journalist, he's a content creator, he is a senior host for Sports Illustrated's daily video content, really cool hits they do. He also hosts regular program on SiriusXM Mad Dog Radio, Chris Russo's joint. He has his own weekend show on CBS called The Robin Lundberg Show, which makes sense because that's his name. He was also on ESPN for a decade. ESPN's loss is our gain. Please welcome, to talk about the madness of March, Mr. Robin Lundberg. Hey, Robin, how are you, man? Oh, I cannot hear you. I'm sure you're great. Sorry. Let me know. That's okay. We'll figure that out. Yes, no, maybe so. It's okay.
I'll work with him on it.
Okay, Gliss, I'll tell a story. Well, no, I don't want to tell a story. I want to tell you who's here. Michaela is here. Oh, that's awesome. Milo is here. Allie is here. Dory, if when I talk to Robin, that's the point. It's kind of like a sports theme, but it's this time of year, no one is immune. People are putting like their brackets in. So if something comes up that Robin hits on or I hit on, throw it in the chat. Say is the word. Say go to your device. Say, Robin, how's USC going to do this tournament? Neither of us are going to know because neither of us are bracketologists. They don't pay either of us enough, and neither of us are probably math majors. No offense, Robin, to Maryland, where Robin went to school. My point is, what I find fascinating, maybe it's about conquest. Maybe people want to be in a pool because of conquest. Do any of you listening like that part of it? Is it just about a turf war for you? Because those brackets are not fun if okay, let me back up. So when you fill out a bracket, there's something called chalk. Do you know this concept? Does anyone in the stream know what, if I say chalk? Chalk means the favorites are going to win. You don't pick a bracket like that. Come on, the history of NCAA tournaments is written on the backs of 12 seeds. Okay, they don't win the damn thing, but I think another reason we're drawn to them is like this David and Goliath thing. I think that's as old as time. That's as old as storytelling. Big school, small school, Division One. Like they're obviously all Division One, but I guess my point is this idea of toppling giants. Like, gosh, I remember from my childhood, like Georgetown lost to Princeton. I remember, David Robinson on Navy. I think they beat Syracuse one year. Like, who can forget 1985? Well, I may be a little older than you, but 1985, Villanova beats the mighty Hoyas. Then we're talking like history of athletics. But my point is, it goes beyond that now. And in a way, the true sports fans don't really know the names anymore. We've all kind of come back to the pack because the way NCAA basketball works is there aren't the household names anymore. They're the blue bloods, like the Dukes, the Kansases, the Kentuckys. I want to throw UCLA in there, but ultimately, I think people feel it's not a done deal. But if you look deeply at this NCAA tournament, this March Madness, it is pretty much fun for the first couple of weeks, and then it's not. Someone is on the stream. His name is Gliss. Yes, Gliss.
Oh, it actually says my name is Minecraft.
Oh boy, who's producing this show? You can't get a guest
I'll
on.
I'll go ahead and change that because that is not my name. But Robin is going to be right back with us. He's going to actually switch laptops just so that we can make sure that.
I heard he was going to catch a plane to your studio in Portland, and we were going to squeeze him in the last 5 minutes of the show. Is that apocryphal? Okay.
No, he's sharp. He's on top of it. And yeah, he should pop back in just a minute here. He's just going to try a different laptop. We were just having a connection issue with his microphone. So
I have connection issues on a daily basis. So one is nothing. I think he may be with us.
You want to try this?
Yeah,
again?
we'll give it a shot.
All right.
We'll give this man a shot. We'll give this up and comer a shot. This guy. We're going to give him a chance. Robin Lundberg, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. You got me?
I got you, man. Loud and clear.
Right.
Thank you for doing this. No pitchers and catchers, so that's like not even strike two. Like there was no strike one. This is like intentional walk. Every mistake is all good.
Well, I'm negotiating up my salary if we're doing baseball metaphors.
Just try to figure out what the hell Manfred is doing and get back to me. Hey man, thank you. And we joked a little bit. I thought it was funny, but I invited you because I think you got a big sports brain. And then you're kind of like, oh, March Madness. Well, that's a little like maybe not the button I hit all the time. But that's kind of my point. Why in the heck? I don't care who you are, how much you know. People get into this time of year. Why is that when you think about it?
The number one reason is the format. The number one reason is the format. And, there are two formats that work every time. One is March Madness, the other is the Royal Rumble with wrestling. 30 guys every 2 minutes, a new wrestler comes down. It's just like inherently exciting. And the format of March Madness, you're activating so many different fan bases, right? Yep. You're a single elimination, so the stakes are very high. So there's built-in drama no matter what team you're watching at the time. There is chaos and frenzy, so there's game after game after game. Not to mention they're on like in the afternoon, so it feels like an event. It's different. The old, before everybody was working from home, that was the day people wanted to call out from work or not be at work, right? And then that also brings in so many people because of the format and its natural accessibility. Gambling. Everybody's in a pool. And what makes you more interested? I mean, look at sports gambling in general now. It's so huge. But what makes people interested in March Madness? Well, it's the fact that they have something on the line, whether it's bragging rights with their friends or it's actually money. And it's very unique because as good as it is, it's one of the only sporting events that I think works in inverse, where it's at its peak at the beginning and actually wanes a little bit as it goes along. Final Four is great. National championship is great. But as people's brackets are busted, sometimes their interest wanes. And what I was just speaking on, that frenzy at the beginning, that's when the most people are activated because there's game after game after game, and you're still actively involved with your bracket. And those first 2 days, I think, are when it's at its peak.
I'm going to write this down. Sports gambling is popular in the U.S. Okay, I wrote that down. I hadn't heard that. I'm joking. It's fascinating about that. It's kind of like this, do you do a pool at SI or CBS Radio or like in the family? Do you do like a bracket pool?
Sure. I mean, I always wind up, I'm not in like one steady one all the time like that. I like as my heritage pool or whatnot, but I'm always in at least one, sometimes two. You got to keep it under control. People have different methods. Like some people want just one master bracket. Some people spread it all around. I do like maybe two, cap it at three at the most. I don't want to get too confused with what's going on. But also, if one's gone, you don't want to be totally out of the mix either.
You got to hedge your bets. You got to go all chalk on one, and you just got to say, Cleveland State. I'm dating myself, but I remember Cleveland State upset in my head. I was also wondering, you went to Maryland. You're a Terp, right? Terrapin?
Mm-hmm.
You were a journalism major. Am I remembering that rightly?
I was a journalism major, and I was there when they won the national championship. They haven't been as good since I left. I don't know if it's a coincidence.
That was well, I'm a Duke fan. I'm a Duke grad, so maybe we can be friends at some point. But I was also thinking about, and I was thinking of Maryland this morning because then they went to the Big Ten, and then it's like, but I guess my point is, what was it like there? Because I actually think that's a feeder system. Because if you scan the crowd, you get like engineering majors, you get like, no offense to engineering majors, but it becomes like, hey, let's go to the basketball game. Do you think that's part of it? Do you think there's any that's kind of where the gateway drug for some people, like making it a college thing, like a rah-rah thing?
Well, some people root for their college teams more than they root for anything else, right?
Right.
They kind of screwed me up. I've always been a pro sports guy more than a college sports guy because I like the highest level. But this speaks to the appeal of March Madness. I think everybody gets a little excited about it. But to your point, yeah, I mean, part of the appeal of college sports is the atmosphere. Yeah. And for some, it's the thing they root the hardest for because it's a personal connection. They went there. Maryland screwed me up because they switched to the Big Ten. So like all these trips I did for student radio down to Duke, down to North Carolina, down to Clemson, the ACC, it's all out the window because they changed and moved over. But absolutely, a lot of people, college is the best time in a lot of people's lives. So they leave college and they're rooting for their team. And you take Kentucky's fan base and you add it to Duke's fan base, and you add it to Carolina's fan base, and you add it to Arizona's fan base, and so on and so forth. That's a lot of people.
It is, and it's really cool. I'm guessing in your travels you've been to tournament games, NCAA tournament games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting. Like I remember going to games, and it's like you see Arizona playing Florida, and their fans are sitting, and you wait when that game is over. The Duke fans and the Utah fans come in. There is a weird fraternity sorority. Like, hey, I got it. Like, yeah, it's almost. I guess my point is, why is this right when so much of the NCAA is wrong? Like, how did they stumble upon this great idea when I feel like a lot of sports infrastructures don't work as well? I know that's a kind of broad question, but.
Again, I think it's not much it's not much more complicated than it's a great format. It's somebody had a great idea once, they put it down on paper, and it never stopped, right? Like, because look, I mean, if we're being real, if you're going to criticize some of the stuff about college sports, you would then have to also point the finger at March Madness, because that's what's driving in a lot of the revenue.
Right.
All the TV deals, all the money that they're getting from that. But people love it so much, they're never gonna give it up, and there is still something about it that feels pure somehow. I guess because there's nostalgia, and then there's the actual raw emotion you get from the crowds and from the players, because a lot of players don't go on and play in the pros, so this is their one shining moment.
Oh my God, you beat me to it, you son of a bee. Yes, one shining moment. Tell everybody who's listening and may not get annoyed and excited the way we just did. What is one shining moment? What is that?
It's a song, isn't it? I mean, that was written around March Madness. I don't know its origins. I'd have to Wikipedia it real quick to get it, but it's become a thing that's attached to March Madness, and it describes the vibe. Adam Morrison down on the court crying because he screwed up and his team lost, or someone jubilantly jumping into the air, and then they're cutting down the nets. That's another thing they do. They cut down the nets, right? Like, so all of that, it's Americana. It's I would say, outside of the Super Bowl, it's the biggest single sporting event. When you're just talking, it's not the most popular sport outside of football. College football is huge. College football is so much more popular than everything else in this country. It's astounding sometimes. But the college football, they're trying to always figure out the playoffs. NBA basketball is more popular, I think, at least from a discussion standpoint, for sure, with a lot of people. But the playoffs are a long process that go on over a few months when you get to the finals. Just as an event, March Madness, I think, probably activates the most people at one time. As the second only to the Super Bowl. Not over maybe the same period, but for like a short period of time.
It owns a month. I don't know who said it about the NFL. They're so powerful, they own a whole day. They own Sunday. They own March. NCAA owns this month. I know there's other things, like Mardi Gras. No, I'm joking. I mean, I know there are other things, spring training theoretically, but they do own a month, which is amazing. Speaking with Robin Lundberg, to me, knows a lot about a lot. I was also thinking about, not to get too myopic, but the game. It's funny. The NBA, to me, what sustained it so well is the palace intrigue. Like, there's so much cool palace intrigue. Like, players migrating, who likes who's scrubbing who from social media, who's got a burner account. But in a way, the games resemble each other too now. And I both blame and praise Seth Curry. I guess my point is the college game still unique as a game? As a game, is it still on its face as unique as when you and I remember, like, Billy Donovan and, Villanova over Georgetown, or, Maryland and Gary Williams? Is it still sanctified, or is it just the tournament is monolithic?
Well, I think it's both. I think the tournament, if the tournament ceased to exist, they'd be in trouble. But the thing that makes it different, and I'll point out that you named Billy Donovan, you didn't name a player. The point that's different in college is the coaches are the big figures.
That's a great point.
In the NBA, the players are the big figure. The NBA, I think, has the best athletes in the entire world. And you can rattle off the superstars. You said Steph Curry, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, so on and so forth that people are familiar with. At college, sometimes I don't know if it actually allows them they're actually playing the game better as a result. In fact, many times I don't think they are, but the coaches are micromanaging even possessions sometimes. And the coaches stay there because the players come in and out, especially nowadays, where if you're really good at basketball, you're not staying in college. You might not be going to college.
Right.
And if you are, you're not there very long. But Coach K, why is it a big deal? He's retiring this year. He's been at Duke forever, right? Same with Roy Williams, who we knew for the longest time, or even Maryland. I saw a rumor that Rick Pitino would consider the Maryland job. Like, these coaches are the star names, and that is what's different. I think about college basketball to the NBA is it's controlled more by the coaches than the players.
It's a great point, and I think I think it was today or yesterday, I think it was even today, one of the digital articles was Bobby Knight and Dean Smith, the unlikely friendship they had. Like, these names are still legion, I get a little cynical about the coaches in the NCAA, because and I'm a Duke guy, but I'm not I gotta say, not that this is controversial. I'm not a huge Coach K fan. I feel like they have a lot of power and they don't exercise it, because I think within coaching there's a fraternity, that a protective fraternity, and this is NBA and NCAA. What is it about the NCAA that seems to kind of skate past its problems? Is it just because of the pure, like you say, the event? Is it the David and Goliath? These feelings are so strong. You don't sit there and think, oh, Rick Pitino had an affair, or there were strippers at a Louisville thing, or Coach K didn't speak out on this. Like, how do we absolve? Like, does sports do that? We absolve sins really easily in sports. Is that sports love? Is that the definition of it?
I mean, it's money, right?
He did the money sign, everybody. Yeah, he did the money
these,
sign.
These programs are generating so much. Colleges, a lot of them are built on the backs of the athletic program, on the football and the basketball team, right? So why do you think they let them skate? Because, all right, we're getting recruits and we're making money and we're big and powerful. And then you have the going back to the fan base point, you have the support of a town, of an area, of a subregion of the country, even when you're talking about certain places that don't really have pro teams and they're much more college based, Alabama in football. And we've seen it, like we've seen minor stuff that you don't want to absolve certain things, but there are minor things. And then there are these major, horrible scandals that we've seen at colleges that people still will support the figurehead there because they're like almost a deity.
100%.
After a while. So yeah, that's part of it. To Coach K real quick, I do want to give him credit for something, because I think one way Coach K impressed me was actually the Olympic teams with basketball.
Interesting.
Because, he did what he did at Duke for the longest time. But if you recall, the Team USA was struggling before he took over. And I don't know what he did. I'm not talking about from an X's and O's standpoint, but just from a personality management standpoint.
Yes.
I think it was impressive that all those pro guys had the same respect for him that he seems to get from the college kids.
They fell in line, and I think Coach K and Kobe always had a special thing, and there were always those rumors that Coach K is going to coach the Lakers and all that stuff, And I don't know if you've read the Coach K bio yet. I don't know if it's like out in mass market yet. The Ian O'Connor book on Coach K looks really interesting, but they talk a little bit about LeBron asking Coach K, "Hey, you better fix this thing." I'm paraphrasing, but like Kobe early on was taking some really crappy shots, Kobe shots, right? But he fell in line. I don't mean to use harsh language, but Coach K talked to him and he said basically, "I got this, coach." So I think you're right. I agree. That's not debatable. Coach K has respect. I'm almost looking at, like, I spent a lot of time in North Carolina, and the anthropology of it bothers me a little bit. Like, I remember, I don't want to get into this, like, because I don't want to bore you. Not that it would bore you, but I remember when the Duke lacrosse thing was happening, Coach K said nothing. Like, my point is, he picks his spots. He's super smart. We'll save that for another day. The other thing I was thinking of, the NBA. I'm an NBA head too, but we'll leave my Lakers out of it for today. Sadly, RIP Lakers. But they're thinking of a tournament now too. What's your position on a potential NBA like mid-season tournament? And I guess I'd also like to hear what is the gain, because it seems like the gain is also a March Madness style gain. But what do you think about the NBA bringing an in-season tournament?
Well, I think they got to do something to make the regular season more exciting, right?
Yeah.
Take Brooklyn right now, for instance. Brooklyn's they've tried with the play-in game, right? And the Nets have fallen in the play-in game. But the Nets have like no sense of urgency in bringing a bunch of their players back. It's driving their fan base crazy. Kevin Durant's going to play on tomorrow. But,
saw that, yeah.
Ben Simmons is still out, even with Kyrie missing half the games, and they're super careful. They say they're ramping these guys up because they know, they can lose. They lost, I think it was 11 games in a row. Your season should be over if you lose 11 games in a row, right? And their season isn't over. So I think anything that they do to try to, the money part messes it up again here because they won't cut the games. The season should be shortened.
I know, man.
Yeah.
That's just a pebble in my goddamn shoe from baseball. Forget football. Like, I think football is close. Now, forget, oh, we're adding a season, adding a week, right? They added a week.
Mhm.
I just think it's untenable. I don't think it's about style of game anymore. 162 games of baseball, 82 games of basketball. It's all about concessions, right? I mean, that's insane to me. It's insane to me, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, and I think today one thing people don't account for with today's basketball game is so much more the court is used, square footage of the
Yeah.
court because of the 3-point
Yeah.
shot and the way the style of play. So there's so much more explosive movement, having to close out, having to navigate screens, having to get to loose balls, what have you, the pace, all that stuff that I think it's taxing on the lower extremities over the course of the season. But to the midseason tournament, I think it's good for them to try new things. The one thing I think they have to figure out is why we care. Like
Right.
what's
Right.
happening at the end of it that's making us care? Is it a badge of honor for that team's fan base? Is there some sort of incentive
Exemption, like get out of jail free, like go right to the playing game, but MLB tried that, you remember, with the All-Star game, right? Whoever wins the All-Star game is the host city, and that flopped. I agree with you, and I'm adding to, not that you're cynical, you're far less cynical than me, but you're right. Like, what, it can't be money. Come on. I mean, so you're going to give the winners each $30,000. That's catering for the week. I agree. I think it's interesting. What is going to be the brass ring for these teams? What could it be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if does a trophy suffice? Can we actually? I mean, or is there,
Right.
charity money? I don't. That's
Right,
why
right.
I guess they've been thinking about it longer than me. I don't know, but there has to be a reason fans care.
Exactly.
And maybe it's gambling. I mean, maybe you
DraftKings
really
presents the NBA midseason
tournament.
tournament.
Yeah, and you bet on that. So I'm sure it's a combination of those things, but they've been talking about it too long for them not to be thinking about the same things.
Agreed. A couple last thoughts with Robin Lundberg. I was thinking about like the college game, the old idea of like kids going to college, needing to go to college before they go to the pros. You see the pros, but you see basketball as a holistic idea. Anyone who follows the NBA, you can't. What I love about the NBA, it's a holistic system. College football is a little different because it's like pawns on a chessboard. But basketball, it's like you see, it's the old thing. Oh, I see this kid go from a kid to a man. The NBA, you can do that. Like, it's not just about this LeBron James commercial where you see him meet himself, but there's something about seeing the journey of these players. What function is NCAA basketball? What's in it for the kid? And you can say in education, but do we really need this way for a pathway that goes through college? Or do you feel it's just we're doing something out of formality still?
I think it's a little bit of both. Look, if you're constructing which college has produced the best pros, it's the not college. It's
the LaMelo Ball school of basketball. Yes, yes.
LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett. that team.
I'll take them. I'll take them. Yeah.
Is the one. But and then now there are more options springing up because you have the NBA G League. You've had guys go overseas. You now have name, image, and likeness at college, which may change things a little bit. But there's also some value to, like, not everybody's going to the pros, like I said before. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's, you can get famous or boosted. Zion Williamson is a good example. Zion would have been a big deal no matter where he played, but he was probably a bigger deal because he played at Duke. So there's still advantages.
Greg Oden. There's countless others. I'm not putting those two together.
Even what Steph Curry did in the tournament or what Ja Morant did in the tournament, those were sort of their coming out parties.
Dwayne
like,
Wade.
oh, wow. Yeah.
Dwayne Wade, Marquette. I remember that Marquette year. He was amazing in the tournament. And yes, he would have been legit. Like, these guys are getting scouted. But I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. But you're right. But we're close, man. And we may be there to a universe where you flip on Wisconsin, Purdue, and you don't know who the hell is playing, like, as a person. Can you separate that? Like, as an NBA, because I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I know when I watch NBA, like I was talking about the Palace intrigue on the court, it's fun too. Like, I want to see the Palace intrigue on the court as well. Like, but college, in a way, it's, as you say, the pure form. Is the pure form enough? If you get ESPN execs, let's leave them out of it. I don't want to put you on the spot. What I'm saying is, if you get TV execs saying, "Oh, good play is enough," is that a lie, or do they want good play with names?
Well, I don't even know how good the play is. I mean,
Yes,
when
exactly.
you're getting the lesser talented guys, a lot of times these tournament games come down to missed shots and turnovers or what have you. Um, it's tricky, but again, they have March Madness, and until that falls, they're good because that's keeping up everything else. Because what you are lacking from the lack of star power or known commodities from players during the regular season is that I don't think it matters come March. I don't think, at least at the beginning, I don't think it matters come March at the beginning because people are invested regardless. Because on Thursday at 3:00, they can see Wisconsin against Marquette, or they can see Cal State, whoever it is, and they're catching bits and pieces of it, or bits and pieces of the next one, and following along with that. That's their investment. That piece of paper is their investment at that point. That's not good enough for February. And for a callback, when you asked me, like I said, about March Madness, there are others who are going to go on and analyze and say which region is the toughest and which seed is the strongest. I'm not qualified to do that right now because I haven't followed to that point that closely because
How
it's
do you
not there.
and how do you follow that? I hate to sound like it's easy to say, but and I mean this, present company included. Like I wanted to have you on the show, and I thought of bracket. I feel grateful and humbled that you're here. I'm also thinking when I thought of the thought bubble, I was thinking bracketologists, but like how long is that conversation? I'm not trying to diss them. I'm just saying, what do they do in your experience with like this bracketology thing? When do they start? Preseason polls, which seem meaningless, right?
Mm-hmm.
When do they start the bracketology? Is it December? Like, what is your take on that?
They're specialists, right? So most people aren't going to want to hear about that on a day-to-day basis. But what's one of the appeals of podcasts? There are so many niche podcasts, right? Like to be a really successful podcast, you have to be like wildly popular to a huge audience,
Right.
or very satisfying to a specific audience,
Right?
And I think that's what they do, right? They're playing to not the group, not the whole. They're playing to this very dialed in group that really follows this stuff closely because they care so much about their college, and therefore they follow the Big Ten, or whatever the case may be. So they're specialists, and then all of a sudden, when March comes around, you're like, oh yeah, I know this guy, because you're used to seeing them at that time of year. But they're playing to a specific audience the rest of the time.
What's interesting, also, a couple last questions with Robin Lundberg graciously giving us his time during this busy season of every season is busy, I guess, except February where the ESPYs come. Who the hell watches those? Sorry, those were my words, not yours, Robin. My point is, it's funny, metrics haven't really corrupted, I won't say corrupted, but haven't touched college sports, even college football. I don't know. Are you a metrics guy? And why do you think there's an immunity? Because I'll say one other thing. Sorry to sidebar, but I was talking to Doris Burke. I had Doris Burke, and we were talking about, and there's this unwritten rule that when you're calling a college game as an analyst, you do not criticize college students. You don't. If you hear Kurt Herbstreit, he'll never say terrible pass to when he was in Alabama. Is there something there about like we keep these events pure because they're young kids, or is that too like, are we not that sweet and it just happens that way? Why is there still a sanctity of college purity? I'm using a word you've used a couple of times, which is a great word. What keeps this purity alive?
Well, I think some of it is people want to feel better about themselves in the way that what they're consuming and what they like, or in their arguments of why college is better than the NBA, or what the case may be. But yeah, age is one thing, and then there's like I said, there's the nostalgia of your own college experience, or that period of your life. As far as the metrics go, there's so much turnover in college, and there's not many You're not arguing about, you're not having a Michael Jordan, LeBron James argument at college, and when it comes to the numbers, I mean, I think like anything else, they shouldn't be the end all be all, but they are data points that are worth knowing and worth studying. Field goal percentage is a metric, but nobody goes, oh my God, analytics, if you use field, or rebounds are a metric, right? Like nobody, oh my God, you're telling me how many rebounds he has. Some of the other stuff is just more advanced or newer more than anything analytics. So they have a place. And I don't side with the people who say, or who might believe that that's the only way to run things. I also don't side with the people who would just ignore it. Like everything else, there's truth in that intersection.
In between, I got analytics for you. Russell Westbrook makes my blood pressure go to like 1,000. That's analytics for you. Can we like tell him the game was canceled? Sorry. Last question for you. If you could watch a Final Four game or a first round best of 7 game 2 of the Eastern Conference, this is a Final Four game, which would you choose?
Final Four or best of the NBA one, for sure. And again, I hate to repeat myself so much, but the beginning of March Madness is bigger than the end of it. I honestly believe that. Like, the Final Four is not as big, especially if the Dukes of the world are eliminated, where people, they don't have the higher name players or the rooting interest of hating Duke. I think March Madness, if you were to poll most people, they're not going to tell you that the Final Four is what's the biggest thing. They're going to tell you it's that Thursday and that Friday.
Okay, then let me reframe that. So there's 2 games on. You get 2 news tickers. One, Princeton, be cliche, Princeton is beating Duke. 2 minutes left. The other, third overtime, Brooklyn versus, let's say Indianapolis. Let's say they sneak in. Indiana sneaks in. Both games are close. Both are in the early stages. So I'm queuing in on that early March Madness thing. Mm-hmm. Would you rather watch a tight early March Madness upset or a tight Eastern Conference playoff game?
I'm an NBA fan first, so I'm gonna.
God damn it! I can't get you out of that, Ken.
I'm gonna choose the NBA, but like that's again, I'll spin it though. First of all, nowadays both. There's no reason I'm not watching both. I have one on my phone or my computer and one on my TV or whatnot, right? And second of all,
that's cheating.
That is part of the appeal of the March Madness is whichever game that you're watching at the beginning, the next one's right after it. So you might miss that one, but the next one is coming. So that's I think the fact that it's one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other is where the madness comes from. That's the yes. the work.
I love how you say that, like it's a real thing. Man, is there a cure to the madness? Is there a cure? There are no cures for the madness.
Winning your pool.
Great wealth. So you go out on top. If you win your pool, you just drop the mic and we'll see you at the Indy 500. No more March Madness. So if you win your pool, you're out of there.
Well, I mean, I think everybody wants to come back the next year. Again, it does appeal to everybody because people will pick based on team colors or they'll pick based on animal names. I've done bits on shows where my kids fill out a bracket, right? And there's just something universal about that.
Doesn't drive you a little crazy when like the intern who delivers your lunch? That's crude. I mean, someone who doesn't follow sports does better in a pool than you. That bothers you a little bit. Come on, you could tell me. No one's listening.
Oh, if I thought I knew more. Right now, I have to. I'm looking at the same stuff they're looking at when it starts. Like, I got a show on. You mentioned I'm doing a show on before Selection Sunday, right? Like, I'm like, I gotta bone up before then.
Hey man, thank you. I took some research time away from you to do this. Thank you so much. And we'll be watching, listening. And I'm telling you, I'm going to catch you in a lie one of these days. I'm going to go home and you're going to be watching, like, there used to be a dead game, like one game no network could cover. You're going to be like, I got to find that dead game. Like USA Network's got to have that dead game. I know how you are.
Well, that is one of the problems. Is what channel am I putting? What is
exactly
True TV? Yeah,
it's like a True TV. Like, but to CBS's credit, they have a good bug where every sport, every game is across the north part of it. Hey man, in all seriousness, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking some time out. Really appreciate it.
You got to have a good one.
You too. Oh, Glisterine producer. Gliss, let me ask you a question. I know we haven't been talking much to the people in the screen, and wow, Mike is here. Jaden is here. Cooper, Coupar, but I think that's probably Ooper. Pardon me. Scott is here. What do you think about that transition in over the course of 2 hours to go from metaverse to, Sweet 16? Did we you may have thought before the show it's not possible. Do you think it's almost possible now, or do you still think it's impossible?
No, I think it's possible. I think I mean, they were both very fascinating segments. So, that's all that really matters when it comes down to it. The content doesn't matter as much as or the topic, I should say, I don't think matters as much as is it interesting and engaging. So
is it one of those things, they used to say, I know you're self-taught. I know you're homeschooled. I know you didn't go to any established universities. I could tell.
Right.
You didn't even have to tell me if I'm right. I know I'm right. You learned from some manual of life.
that's right.
Is it one of those old is it one of those old things, you don't take the class, you take the teacher? Remember that old idea? Do you believe in that? I mean, you have kids. How are you thinking of screwing up their lives? Are you going to say to them, take the classes you like, or take the teachers that you like?
Well, I think there's maybe truth in a little bit of both of those.
I hate when people say that. You know why I
I mean,
hate when
it's
people say
true
that?
though,
It's
because
true.
I
You're
mean,
right. That's why I hate it. Like, the conversation's over, but you're right.
I mean,
Okay.
yes, if there's a person that you feel like is could leave a lasting impression, or a teacher, then yes, that's the right way to go. But you shouldn't go away from things that might interest you just because you don't know who the teacher is, or because it might not be the most interesting person.
I went to. I'm not saying this out of a sense of vanity. I just think a lot of my, as Robin was talking about this college thing, and I was saying I think it's kind of a gateway drug to, it's colleges. College athletics exist to infect legions of people,
Yeah.
so they can buy team garb. But I was thinking about this the other day. Ironically, I took a philosophy class at Duke University, and there was one of the wide receivers was in the class, small class, like, seminar. And Duke doesn't have a good football team, but athletes. It's funny. Athletes are these kind of deities. They're kind of these gods on campus. So I remember. I'm not here to criticize. He was a nice guy. I'm not going to name him, nice guy, but I remember he wrote a letter to the school newspaper about a week later because someone in the school newspaper had criticized that athletes are treated better than most college students. And this is an age-old argument. I'm sure every college newspaper has said something. So one of the college football players who I knew wrote a letter, and he's writing this long letter about that's wrong. Athletics are great, and this is why they're great. And at the very end of the letter, he says, and that's why I'm excited to say Duke football has given me the best 6 years of my life. And I laughed. I was like, do you realize how insane that statement is? Because most people go to college for 4 years. For 4 years. Now, I just thought it was funny. Anyway, it's just a weird, I guess part of it is like what we were talking about before. I mean, hour one, this idea of why people do things. Is it because it's the next thing to do, or is it like out of desire? I guess my point is, I don't know how you are, Gliss, but I've always been the one, if everyone's doing it, I kind of wonder why and am less likely to do it. Are you that kind of weirdo too?
I would say so. Yeah, to a certain extent. I always at least have, question things a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of really stupid things that a lot of people like. So I always just try to,
what is the one thing
check it out myself.
Well, what is the one thing you're part of it? It's like that old question. Suzanne is on the stream. Hello, Suzanne, from Massachusetts. What is one thing you do? That old thing, like the one song on your playlist, you're embarrassed. You like when people hit shuffle, they'll come on, like Wrecking Ball. I know you're a big fan of the song Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus, but are there anything, you don't have to answer now. Email me later. Is there one thing, like a club that you joined that you're slightly ashamed of, or one thing you engaged in, like, oh yeah, I did watch all the Harry Potter movies. Like one thing that you're kind of like,
type thing.
No, like embarrassing pleasure. Like you're embarrassed.
Well, I don't know if it's embarrassing. I'm a huge Disney fan, in particular, Disney parks. I would say I'm a little bit of I have a little bit of Disney parks historian in me, so I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to the history of Disney and
Even
Disney
Euro
parks.
Disney, Euro Disney too.
It's something I've tapped into a little bit, not as much as the two parks here in the States, but
you've tapped that vein.
I have to give myself, more room to learn some stuff down the line. So first I had to, know everything there is to know about the two parks that I've visited. So, I would say,
which do you prefer, Disney World or Disneyland?
Well, Disney World's a better vacation, but I think Disneyland's because I like the history and just kind of the uniqueness of it. I think Disneyland's the most unique park just because it's the original and it's small and it's all the original ideas that Walt Disney had packed into a tiny little theme park.
Man, you sound like you work for these people. You know what's funny? I'll just ask one thing. I know we're almost to wrap up, but what is a ride? We could actually do a whole show on this, because I'm going to tell you, when I'm scared of heights, so
Right.
I think a ride is like the Spaceship Earth, the big bubble at Epcot Center. I was like, that's a ride, and people are like, that's not a ride, dude. Like Magic Mountain, like a roller coaster is a ride, a log flume is a ride. But to me, like a ride is like, I want to learn the history of chocolate, from farming to like packaging. That's a ride. How do you define and am I a scaredy cat? Should I be embarrassed that I said any of that?
No, not at all. I mean, that's why I think of them more of as attractions, just because they're. I don't know, it's a big word coming from a theme park enthusiast. No, but I think, I mean, I do. I think that
pastimes. Are you ever called them a pastime?
Well, I'll say this. I went to Disneyland over the summer with my two teenagers, and we did the Star Wars thing for the first time. The Rise of the Resistance ride is up until the point where you actually get on a ride. It's more like an experience, like you're kind of going through the motions of playing out this whole scenario, and then you eventually get on a ride. But it's not until much later in the quote unquote ride that you actually get on a ride vehicle and have the ride aspect of the ride.
I think it's a fitting way to end that story, which really I didn't quite follow. But the other reason to end is Death has officially joined the stream. 5:44.
I saw that.
5:44 Eastern Standard. Death joined the stream, and anyone who follows Backchannel knows that when Death joins the stream, the show must end. So I want to thank you all for being here, listening, and being passengers. I want to thank Backchannel, the folks behind the screens, behind both of our screens, who kind of make this a ride for us. I want to thank Gliss, who I've heard good things about. I can't substantiate it based on one show. I think I need more of a sample size. I want to thank Mr. Gliss. Thanks, man. And I want to thank you. But this isn't goodbye, because Mario will be back tomorrow driving. He's becoming a movie
Friday.
Okay, Friday. Okay, look, never interrupt. Never. See, this is what I'm saying about Gliss. Never interrupt misinformation. That's the best description I've ever heard of a metaverse. Never interrupt misinformation. Mary will be back on Friday. No show on Thursday, but you can come back tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Haley and Allison, and people like Shaw, who just jump in from South Carolina, and Gian from Oregon, and Death. But Death, if you're going to join their show, join at the end. That's all I ask of you, Death. In the meantime, thank you all. I'm Robert Milazzo. Mr. Gliss was behind the wheels. Thank you to Rodney Asher and Robin Lundberg. Beware the madness. Beware the NFTs. And if it looks real, it's probably not. Thank you, and we'll see you again.